किसानों की उन्नति में ही देश की प्रगति है। ये हर उस देश के लिए सच है जहां की अर्थव्यवस्था कृषि पर निर्भर है। और क्या आप जानते हैं कि भारत की 1/3 जीडीपी कृषि से आती है? The advent of technology in the agro sector has completely transformed farming. With more efficient online solutions, warehouses with geotagging and the application of AI and ML to optimize farming output, startups in India have started accelerating their growth by innovating in agri-tech and helping farmers drive their business efficiently. Joining us today are Anil, Nadig and Srivatsa Sreenivasarao from TraceX Technologies to share with us their experience and story of leveraging AWS to drive efficiencies for agriculture.
Hi, this is Anil Nadig, co-founder at TraceX Technologies. I primarily look after sales, marketing, and finance. Academically, an engineer, spent 18 years in the IT product and services industry, working for companies like Infosys, Misys, and British Telecom. I'll let Sri introduce himself.
Sure. Hi, my name is Srivatsa. I'm one of the co-founders here at TraceX Technologies. Academically, an electrical engineer, and then picked up career in software engineering since the year 2000. We both have had very interesting journeys, individual interesting journeys, which has eventually led us to what we've created here at TraceX. Let me start with mine before I request Anil to talk about his story. Way back in 2014, which is when I moved out of my corporate career, took up a role of an engineering head for a edtech company to build their products and services, which is around the time that I went to IIM Bangalore for my higher studies to do my executive management program. As part of the program, we picked up to study the expenses that a farmer incurs on his typical production rollout. Let's say if he's growing something in a particular season, where does he spend the money? Where does the money go? All that money go? That was something very interesting for us to take as part of our statistics project. We went and met several farmers in one of the districts very close to Bangalore, Tumkur. That's where we met the farmers. We understood that significant part of money is being spent on the inputs. When we talk about inputs, these are essentially the chemicals and pesticides and so on and so forth that the farmer uses to produce the crop. And that's when I also understood it's not just about spending the money, it's also about how much of these things are going into the food that we eat every day. And that led us personally, for me, to look for safer food options. In my quest for looking for safer food options is when I met my partner, Anil Nadig, in one of the NGO events that he passionately runs.
Yeah, back in 2010, when I came back to India, we were on the family where we were very conscious about what food we were eating as a family. And I happened to meet Dr. Vishwanath, who's known as the father of urban rooftop gardening. And together with a set of conscious people, we started this NGO called Garden City Farmers, promoting the culture of growing your own food, and the urban rooftop gardening movement started there. I happened to meet Sri, who was also very conscious and very passionate about growing his own food. And then we started talking, and finally we realized that this is something that we want to structure and formalize as an organization to build. And that's when Jivabhoomi started as an initiative to connect farmers and consumers via the food which is grown organically, safe to eat, and conscious consumers who are passionate about knowing where the food comes from. This whole journey, the importance of ensuring transparency and trust and traceability for the entire food that is coming through the system was very critical. And that is how we started talking more about how the food safety and the journey of the food becomes very critical in everything that we do. It's laid the foundation for ultimately building what we do at TraceX.
The moment I met Anil back in 2015, I realized there's something very common in both of us, which was about safe food and making safe food not just available for ourselves, it was for everyone else. which was the genesis, like Anil said, of Jivabhumi. But then very interesting journey that we went through in the last few years in Jivabhumi led us to create TraceX. What was it? When we started working closely with consumers at our earlier, the startup, we realized that when you look at the transparency in food supply chains, it was no different from what we had a few years back, right? So it was non-negotiable. As we as individuals were very passionate about and very paranoid about rather the food, similarly we found a whole lot of people share the same sentiment about the food they eat. Therefore, naturally their expectations from the brands from whom they would buy food was always very high, to know where the food comes from, what goes into making the food, where is the food produced, where is the food processed, where is the food consumed. All of this story had to be told very convincingly to consumers for them to believe in a particular food brand. And that was our own experience in Jivabhumi because our consumers were asking for it. Then trying to solve that problem, we built a technology for ourselves, which eventually made us realize that we had not solved a problem, a big problem of supply chain transparency just for ourselves. We had apparently solved it knowingly or unknowingly for the entire ecosystem, which is when we decided that we were going to take the product to multiple other customers as well. And that was the beginning of TraceX. And since then, we've traveled a long distance, both from our own individual journeys, the maturity of the product, the maturity of our customer, implementing our product with customers and so on and so forth. And along the journey, we've leveraged several technology partners, and AWS happens to be one of them as well. At TraceX, we're passionately building a digital agriculture platform that enables multiple participants across the supply chain, right from producers to food aggregators to food processors and the logistics providers and so on and so forth, to come on a common platform where the information can be shared, information about the food can be shared democratically, which means that every participant in the supply chain has access to the right information which they legitimately must have on the food that is being produced. Because we fundamentally believe information about the food is a common property of all the participants. Let me tell you how it works with an example. We work with a coffee startup here in Bangalore who are very passionate about coming across as a very transparent brand, right? Therefore, naturally, they want to let their consumers know very easily several claims they make about coffee. For example, the place where they source the coffee from, how fresh the roasted beans are, and so on and so forth. But they have to do it without a technology in place. It's quite hard for them. Firstly, they have to work with the supply chain, a complex supply chain, and gather so much more information working with multiple participants there, which makes it very difficult for them to get to a greater visibility of the supply chain. But with solution like us, where the producers of the coffee itself, the raw coffee producer, the berry producers themselves use our application at the plantation, where a lot of information about production of the coffee berries are captured. Then we talk about the food processor who is primarily responsible for processing raw coffee into a green coffee, uses our application to capture the story of how did the berry become a green coffee now. Right? The next step in that supply chain is green coffee, getting roasted, and then before it's brewed and consumed by a consumer, right? Then then there is the coffee roaster who is actually leveraging our application to capture the entire story of roasting profiles, the roasting quality, and so on and so forth, right? So eventually, if you can see this journey, when the cup of coffee reaches consumers like I and you, we're able to trace that cup of coffee back to the plantation in Chikmagalur where it was grown. So that's the power of technology that we've built. That's one of the use cases. We work in several value chains, including agri and non-agri, for example, dairy value chains as well.
So one of our other customers is a large agri commodity trader and an exporter in India, where we work on the basmati paddy value chain with about 600 farmers in the Fatehabad district in Haryana, where right from the farmers, the entire digitization happens through our multilingual offline first mobile application, which captures the entire farmer journey, the pre-harvest journey. And the post-harvest journey is on the web application, where the exporter uses, the agribusiness uses the application to capture the specific batch details on every batch And we also have every sample taken for every 25 kilometers of paddy that is being produced. There is a sample taken and tested by an independent laboratory that is also uploaded onto our application. All of this information is now recorded onto the blockchain network that we have, the platform that we have called FoodSign, where all of these participants' information is independently captured. And this project enables sustainable rice production, meeting all the residue level standards dictated by the European Union and ultimately getting exported to the European Union. So the entire chain enables impact to the farmers on one end and sustainable and safe production and quality food for the consumer as well.
And there are other customers that we work with as well. But before that, let me tell you, why did we choose blockchain? It was a very natural choice for us to choose to build something like this on a blockchain, because as we discussed before, there are multiple participants across the complex supply chain putting data, consuming data from a platform. Therefore, authenticity and trust of the data had to be of utmost importance. Therefore, we chose to build the entire platform on blockchain, and that's exactly where we're also leveraging the power of AWS to allow us to build intensive computing smart contracts on the AWS platform as well. Talking about a couple of other use cases. Again, we work with one of the contract farming companies that operates in the region of Nilgiris in production of iceberg lettuce. As you can see, iceberg lettuce is an exotic vegetable, which is something that we all eat when we go to McDonald's and KFCs. We consume that as part of the burgers that we eat, right? And the company that we work with in Nilgiris actually produces iceberg lettuce for McDonald's and KFC on a contract farming model. That project, again, McDonald's is so very paranoid about quality and traceability. They're leveraging our platform right from digitizing a single farmer's information, profiling of each and every 300 of those farmers that produce the crop for the company. Every single farmer's information is digitized on our application. A geographical land where their land is located, that's captured, geo-mapped on our platform using our multilingual application. Then every season, whenever they do their crop planning, it's all recorded on our application. Our application intelligently gives something called package of practices to the farmers, telling them exactly during those 80 to 90 days of production of iceberg lettuce, what are various interventions that they have to do to ensure a quality production of the produce, right? Once the crop is completely tracked and produced on our system, it's then harvested, including the information about which farmer harvested, how much, where did they harvest. All of that is actually captured on our platform, and up until the produce moves to a pack house where the quality is checked for the incoming produce. Then the quality is aggregated from across multiple farmers, pushed into a pre-cooling chamber before it's actually shipped out, and the produce is, after pre-cooling, the produce is essentially processed again, packaged and labeled. And when every crate carrying 11 heads of iceberg lettuce is packed into a crate, every single crate is QR coded with a label that dynamically gets generated out of our application. The label carries a QR code which will tell the subtle story about the entire journey that iceberg lettuce has had, right from being sapling all the way till being iceberg lettuce head on the crate. And the same story very transparently goes to the warehouses of McDonald's and KFCs, where they are now so much assured about the quality of produce that they are buying.
We also work across other value chains like paddy, spices, horticulture, organic, seeds, and we are also expanding the traceability to poultry and fisheries and so on.
And we're building all of these on AWS. They've been a very integral part of our product roadmap so far, especially when you talk about technologies like blockchain. They're quite intensive when it comes to infrastructure management, and that's exactly where AWS is helping us focus on building the application and worry less on the infrastructure itself. For example, we use a Kubernetes cluster, AWS managed Kubernetes cluster and our entire blockchain network is deployed on that. We're also seriously considering using AWS managed blockchain services as well. We use other services like Route 53 to Elastic Storages to every supply chain participant is represented as a pod on a Kubernetes cluster for us, and so on and so forth. So that's the implementation, that current implementation we have on AWS, and then we continuously look for technology enhancements and infrastructure enhancements working with AWS.
So we look forward to furthering this partnership together, and as we scale into international markets as well as into the domestic markets, helping agribusinesses build credibility to the claims that they do and the impact to the farmers as well. So thank you so much.
Exciting times ahead for us. Thank you.